Good morning. I know some folks are still trickling in here, so I will just start with introductions of myself and everyone on the stage today. My name's Rosenberg. I'm a product manager at Socrata. I manage our performance tools, Open Performance, and the Performance Cloud. Check your agenda for the afternoon. And so I'm here speaking to a number of awesome leaders in the performance space, and hope to have a conversation that is super exciting and interesting to everyone here. I'm joined by, let's get everyone in the right order here. We have Kim Olivares. So Kim is the Chief Performance Officer at the City of Austin. She spoke this morning, in case you happen to miss that. She served in various roles at the City of Austin since 2003, most recently having been the Deputy Budget Officer. In 2015, the city recognized the need for a greater focus in performance management via the creation of the Office of Performance Management, and Kim was selected to launch the office and build it to offer strategic plan development, implementation, performance management, data analytics, and process improvement functions. Powerhouse. Kim is motivated to serve the community through data-driven decision-making, and continuous improvement. I asked each of the panelists today to provide me with a fun fact because it's more fun, right? If we know something that is a little bit unrelated and interesting, give you something to chat about over lunch. What Kim shared is that she was a percussion teacher before starting her career at the city. She believes that teaching and fostering creativity among kids greatly influenced her desire to empower and encourage the city's workforce to to use its creativity for continuous improvement as we serve the community. Percussion teacher, fun fact. Yes. Thanks, Kim. And we have next, Melissa Bridges. Melissa Bridges is joining us from the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, where she is the Performance and Innovation Coordinator. Melissa was the city's lead in applying for Bloomberg Philanthropies What Works Cities initiative in November 2015, while serving as the Network Security Manager for the city's IT department. Little Rock worked with a series of strategic partners, and I was super impressed rereading this list here, including the Sunlight Foundation, Johns Hopkins University Center for Government Excellence on Performance Measures, and Harvard's Kennedy School Government Performance Lab on Results-Driven Contracting. Powerhouse. The city made a commitment to use its data to make better decisions, and from this work, the position of Performance and Innovation Coordinator was created just in January 2017, and that's the role that Melissa now holds. Fun fact about Melissa is that she served in the Peace Corps in Honduras. Next, we have Laura Shearin. Thanks for being here. Laura joins us from the city of Henderson, where she is the Business Administration Manager, and she's held that role since 2015. I get that right. She oversees the Office of Business Management, which assists the city leadership in implementing strategic and operational planning, performance measurements, and associated continuous improvement efforts. She holds a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering.
Don't hold that against me.
Fun fact. And that's not the fun fact. And is currently working on a master's in public administration from Penn State. Super busy.
Super busy.
All right. She has held, and she's held numerous positions at the city since 2005. Fun fact, she was the first female production supervisor at Barrick Gold Corporation's Bullfrog Mine in Beatty, Nevada? Beatty, Nevada, population 1,591. Awesome. All right. Those are our fantastic panelists for today. So let's go ahead and get started. So we're talking about performance management today. We had the opportunity to speak a little bit on the phone and get to know each other, and what we learned is that while everyone on the stage comes from a different background, chemical engineering and volunteering in Honduras and percussion, et cetera, and you all work in governments that are in different places in your performance program, there were a lot of intersections in your work, and there were a lot of similar challenges that you have and similar successes. So I thought I'd start with just asking, when you look at where you started your program, like you all were sort of like at the forefront of starting these programs, what were some of the challenges that you faced on day one that you still continue to face today? And Kim, just being to my left here, I'll invite you to start first. So go ahead.
So if you heard my talk this morning, you noticed that my team includes myself and 4 other folks. And we're an organization of 14,000 people. That is a challenge to serve that organization, also the community of our size, with just 5 people total. So the supply versus demand challenge is significant. And with the various services that we provide, we discovered very quickly that even with just organic growth and not even advertising everything in a really deliberate way, that demand quickly outpaced supply. And it's not getting any better, but the exciting part of that is that the organization clearly is hungry for the services and for the concepts behind performance management. They see the value, they see what can happen as they embrace those different functions and skill sets and capabilities.
Was the organization hungry from the beginning, or did it take some work to get there?
I think we saw, as we were releasing things just in tidbits, we immediately saw that hunger.
Yeah.
And as we started the whole strategic planning process, we actually did a whole series of focus group meetings with employees from throughout the organization. And that need for focus, that need for better performance tracking, that need for just goals that everyone can rally around, it was very apparent, like within the various first focus group and all of them, that there was a desire for that. And so we were like, okay, we're going down the right path. we're not creating something that folks are going to be like, and yeah, we have yet another plan we're dealing with. So there was a real desire for us to build these different capabilities.
Great. So Melissa, again, we'll just continue to my left here. So challenges for you from day one.
So in Little Rock, I think we kind of went at it a little bit backwards. Even though we were a what-work city and we did have Sunlight and we did have GovX be able to come in, we were focused more on the department director level and maybe the mid-managers right below them, the assistant directors of the departments, to educate them, because we knew we had to have that buy-in from that level for us to be able to go anywhere. But I think that actually made it a slower adoption and a slower process to get there. We were way far behind Austin and actually started this because our city manager came and visited Austin and saw some of the stuff that they were doing and was excited and wanted to bring it back to Little Rock. But I think we're at the point now, when I was hearing Kim talk this morning about her data liaisons, we've got a data working group now that's cross-departmental. Every department's been trained on the framework and on the platform, and it's that group that has that pent-up need and that excitement and that idea generation that's actually moving it forward much faster at this point. And I think if I had it all to do again, I probably would have flipped it and started with that group and not so much the higher levels. Because again, they kind of slowed down the process, because there were a lot of the department directors that weren't necessarily working with the information day to day and seeing the ideas that could be generated from sharing it across departments. And their thought was, well, no, we don't need to put that out there. No, we don't need it. No, that's not information that somebody else could use. Why would we do that? Whereas you had people on the front lines that were saying, to the conversation about the blight, the code enforcement officers were needing the police information, that were needing the planning permit information, and they didn't have ready access to it. And we've finally gotten to the point where they now know, oh, here's the place we can go and find that. And they're generating more and more ideas based off of that.
Can you relate to Kim's comment about supply versus demand, having not enough supply and much demand for
I'm
all the work
jealous
you're
of
doing?
her staff of 5 because I'm a staff of 1. And so, yeah, so supply versus demand at this point, I think that's where the fact that we now have that data working group, and I'm really happy because there's a few of them that were able to come with me to Socrata this year. They're the extra hands. They're the extra people that are the cheerleaders for it, the champions for it. They're having conversations that I'm not a part of and I don't have to be there for, because they now have the tools and the knowledge and know who to go have the conversation with. So that's made it actually easier on me, but I know the deeper and deeper we get into it, at some point there's that, okay, we've reached the tipping point, and I have a feeling that's going to come a lot quicker than we want it to.
Call Kim and ask her for.
Exactly.
All right, Laura, how about you? Some challenges from day one that you still see persisting today?
So our program started as an initiative, and when the Office of Business Management was created in 2015, my marching orders were to operationalize it. And so some of the challenges that we've been facing are putting the tools in place and educating people on what it means to do performance management, My office and my staff are focused on measuring, putting targets in place, communicating across those silos, and then integrating continuous improvement activities and innovation into those things when we aren't meeting those targets. And so I'm sort of a little bit, we are a blend, I think. There is a demand for the services, but I think, to your point, starting at the lower levels and only having 3 staff to do some of this is still our challenge. We are in every department. We have 14 independent departments, from police, fire, water, wastewater, public works, all of the usual. And we are asking our middle managers and our supervisors to hold stat meetings, to call up data in the system, to discuss it amongst themselves. And again, myself and our team are not there, right? So it's sort of training them how to do that, how to have those discussions, how to pull in the voice of their customers, right? So it's a lot of training, a lot of, but it is a resource nightmare to try and implement citywide a standardized framework. It's rough.
I'm certain that no one in the room is surprised that the theme of the challenge has been sort of being under-resourced, right? With so much to do, so little time, so few dollars, so many people to do it. So Laura, maybe starting with you, it sounds like you've been successful in leveraging other individuals in your organization, really being creative. What are some successes you've seen, some strategies you've employed to overcome that, sort of the resource struggle?
We have decentralized. That is the key. We have trained individuals in every department on how to enter data into the system, on how to use the data in meetings with their peers and with their subordinates, and even reporting up to their managers. We have developed a whole program around training individuals in departments to run Kaizen events, to run Lean Six Sigma events, to recognize those problems and gather up people and start to attack the problems using data. So it's a decentralized process, not completely successful yet. I don't want to give anybody the impression that we are like there, because we're not. Tying in those strategic metrics, right, and getting everybody focused on what our council feels is important. Plus the day-to-day stuff, right? So it's multi-pronged, it's multi-dimensional, but the key in our experience is this whole decentralization and the training that goes with that. If I had a wish list, it would be, I need like 8 trainers to just go out there and really increase the capacity of our organization to do some of these things that we're looking to do.
So Melissa, when you think about this growth that is impending and you think about getting ready for that with your program, how do you think about tackling the challenges with resources in your program?
I think it's a lot of what Laura said. We're trying to go at it the same way, and we leveraged our contract with Socrata too, being able to have education hours built in there so that we had on-site and had access to online training. And it's finding the people that care. That's the biggest key to it. And I'll give a perfect example. So we've started an internal city stat meeting just for looking internally at information, just try and figure out, well, what does this look like? What does this feel like? Because we've never done a citywide one. And the idea is to kind of use that as our place to have our training wheels on and figure out, what does this look like? What does this feel like, before we go public facing and say, okay, and here's the conversation that we're going to start engaging the citizenry with. And some of the things that have come from this, a good example that I like is one of our parks people from our golf courses. We're trying to figure out, well, we've always got to justify, why is our revenue up? Why is our revenue down? And it's weather related. We get really, really hot days in Little Rock, just like you do in Austin. We get really wet months. We have days that it's below freezing. And that affects the revenues, because who wants to go out when it's 150 degrees? So one of the things that came from that was we found out that they were manually collecting weather information because they needed to show, well, it rained for 5 days straight, or we had 10 days of 100 plus and 90-degree humidity or 90% humidity. And through the conversations, the people from the zoo went, wait a second, we need that information too, because we have to do the same thing because it affects our gate revenue as well. And so one of the people from the Parks Department was able to go find an API and pull in the weather information. And it was something that then the police thought, oh, wait a second, because that affects us too, because we know that crime does certain things depending on the weather. And our codes guys were like, wait a second, that affects us and the whole blight issue because it's weed lot season in Little Rock. All the grass is going to start growing. So being able to have just even those small achievements and raising those up. And then the other part of the decentralization piece, we just had a conversation about the fact, even though we have a standing schedule for these city stats, we've skipped a couple because other things have happened. And my point was, you're going to kill all that forward progress and that forward momentum and those successes that are happening because you finally got all these conversations happening that they didn't have a place to take place before. And had to kind of have a real heart-to-heart with our department directors and our city manager and said, we're going to have these meetings whether or not you people are in the room because we need to keep moving it forward regardless.
That's a great story. Kim or Laura, do either of you have any great stories of sort of those like nuggets of people who were excited and engaged, you were able to sort of, you know, give them what they needed to be successful and that helped to sort of catalyze other individuals in your programs?
So similar to what Laura was talking about in being decentralized and training folks. So what I'm seeing pop up now is because we're preaching the gospel, so to speak. We're training other folks on these different skills. We're seeing actual other directors see the value of having that kind of a function, not just from a corporate perspective, but from a department perspective. So they're actually setting up their own little OPM or office performance management groups within their own departments, which that I'm thrilled with, because the more people that we can have digging into this information, digging into the data, digging into the performance information and really working with it to make improvements, the better. And then those folks are at a level where they're able to dig into a level of detail that I just don't, my team, we don't have the capacity. Would we love to be able to dig into that kind of detail for each of the departments? Absolutely, but we just don't have that capability. So as we continue to spread the word and show folks how positive these different functions and these tools can be, and see these additional groups pop up, then I consider ourselves a success.
Yeah. Laura, you mentioned something, or let me give you the opportunity. Did you have a story or an anecdote about finding a catalyst?
If I had anything to add, I would say that, you know, people are smart, and if you build a system that drives their behavior, and in our case, we are starting to tie measures and those kinds of performance indicators to our budget system, right? And they're starting to catch on that this is a vehicle to be able to justify some of their requests, right? So right now we are undergoing an exercise where we're doing some data conversion on our parks inspection information. And so we have some really good baseline data. Our council has been pressuring us to think outside the box. Maybe we might want to contract out maintenance of a park and see how that works out. We are toying with some of our staffing models around maintaining parks. And so our parks manager is extremely excited about being able to get this data in. He's got a great baseline now, and he is ready to go when he lets this maintenance contract out and he changes his staffing model. He wants to see what the data is going to do now over time. And he's thinking he may be able to justify more staff or some kind of a different model that he's thinking of, right? So I would say if you can get that buy-in from those levels and really start to demonstrate the value and how they can use it to sort of tell their own story, I think that they're having success with that.
Laura, Laura, you said something earlier about if you had you could have any wish come true, the dream you wish for is you had 8 people to help train. Only 8 people? Only, only 8
Yeah, I
people?
was having a discussion with somebody here earlier today. I haven't counted them, but I estimate middle managers and supervisors, we've got hundreds. And so I think that level of management is really where the power of some of the stuff we're trying to do lies. Much like Melissa, we started with the directors, and they're so busy. They're so busy that it's hard for them to internalize the information and kind of push it down into their organization. So I do think the bottom up is where it's at. And, you know, if I'm going to train hundreds of people, yeah, it's not just, you know, there's a performance management piece, there's a continuous improvement piece, there's innovation. We want to be more agile, quicker, faster, more responsive to our customers. We're talking about co-creating solutions with our citizens, right? Bringing them into these problem-solving sessions. And so there's just a lot of capacity building that we need to do within our organization. And yeah, only 8, I don't know how many it would take to do that, but that would be my biggest wish, yes.
Your biggest wish, all right. So Melissa, and then Kim, you get ready. If you had your magical unicorn, the thing that would, I mean, the sort of theme of what we're talking about is the supply and demand, right? Like having a lot of work to do and not having enough people to do it. What would be your magic fix to that?
I think to echo off of what Laura said and to pull from what Kim had said this morning in her talk this morning, the thing that we're trying to do is exactly that, educate more of our own staff so that they can then be that multiplier effect to then help educate even more. And then the other piece of it is, while we've had little nuggets here and there of the citizen piece of it and trying to build that civ tech community that Kim has here in Austin, we're not quite there, but we hosted our very first Open Data Day weekend earlier this year. It was the same weekend as the Little Rock Marathon, which I'm going to say a number, and my marathon guy's here and he can tell me that it's wrong. Thousands of people come to Little Rock for the marathon. It was a rainy, nasty, cold weekend. We had 35 people show up for our very first thing at a community center on the opposite end of town, and they stayed for 3.5 hours and talked about data. I call that a success. Yeah. And we've got a communication group that's talking through all that now, because there was lots of them that said, hey, here's my email, keep me in this loop, let me know how we can help. There were grad students from our MIS program at the local university that said, I've got to have projects and you guys have data. Hey, let's talk. So we're just now to the point that we're trying to figure out what are those other things in the community that we can do to keep this conversation moving outside of the walls of City Hall. To figure out, okay, well, what is that other piece of information that we need to pull out of whatever deep, dark corner it's in and get it out there so that people can use it? Or what is that thing that the neighborhood association's asking for that they could find helpful as they're trying to figure out, well, what are the decisions we need to make this year? And let's figure out what's going on with all the information that we can get from the city to help us figure out here in this micro piece of the city of what we need to do. So I think we're slowly getting our tentacles out there, and I think it's the multiplier effect is my big thing.
Yep. Sounds like you've got some great momentum. All of you do, really. So Kim, for you, your magical unicorn.
It would be resolving the data maturity challenges we have throughout the organization. So we're a really large organization, and I talked to a few people about this morning. There are some areas of our organization that are in the world of predictive analytics, and then there are others who are literally still on a clipboard with a piece of paper out in the field. And if we're lucky, they might scan it in, let alone having it into into a real database and things where we can really work with it. So, and then just everything in between. So we are all over the spectrum, and so trying to balance fix that as well as find tools that also can be used by that big spectrum. Like those folks that are in predictive analytics mode, what kind of, like, versus those, I'm still on paper mode, ease of use of different tools is another big challenge in addition to capabilities of those tools. It can't be so easy that my predictive analytics folks are going to be like, yeah, thanks, I'm moving on. So I'm trying, so if that unicorn would be fixing that spectrum and finding and getting that suite of tools throughout the organization to really boost our analytics capabilities.
Awesome. So we've got about 4 minutes left here on the timer. Watching it closely, being the project manager at heart here. So it sounds like there are a few themes that I wanted to just call out and then invite you all to share if you had any additional parting thoughts for the group. I assume we have folks who are in the very least interested in performance management in the room, if not running your own programs, maybe staring down the barrel of like starting something new, heaven forbid. So some of the things that I heard all of you say is that it's really helpful in your programs and things that help you be successful are to find the people who care. You know, Melissa, you articulated that really well. Find those catalysts, find those people who are interested, right? I know, Jeff, you talked yesterday about finding the intersection of something that is both feasible and is really going to have impact, right? So finding like a great story that can then grow and be an example for others of how data can be used to drive better decision making, et cetera. Tying performance to budget. I think that's something we probably don't talk about often enough. I know yesterday in our education system, or in our education day, we didn't talk about that nearly enough of how do you tie budget to performance. And really, most organizations are very young in doing that. And partnerships was something else that I heard come out as leverage partners, look outside of your walls, look outside of City Hall and find other partners such as universities. So in hearing my distillation of what I heard all of you shared today, any other sort of thoughts when you look out to folks in the audience, things that you have found be really successful for yourselves? And Laura, maybe I'll start with you. If you're ready, you can pass to someone else. But
I do think that finding leaders in your organization, and I think, a leader you can find anywhere. It's not based on your position, right? And so I do think finding the people that can carry the water for what it is you're trying to do is key. If you don't do that, then you are out there on your own trying to convince other people that this is really the right thing that you want to be doing. And I think if you can organically sort of pick those people who are natural leaders in their own organizations and get them trained up and excited and understanding what kind of an impact they can make even in their smaller work groups, I think that really is what we're trying to do. And where we found our biggest successes in the departments where we're in, that has been a key component, it's not us doing it. We can't own it all. So you have to find those people in those areas that can do that.
absolutely. Melissa?
And I'll just quickly piggyback off of what she said. So in my title, there's the word coordinator. And that's the part of my job that I try and spend the most time doing and not focusing so much on the heavily technical side of it. It's making sure that this person in that department knows this person in that department, and you guys are asking the same question, you're just coming at it differently and making those connections inside.